Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It is Friday. We're finishing up our conversation on the book of Ezekiel. Your reading today was Ezekiel 34. I'm with Sheryl Daughety and Zack Unkenholz. And this conversation is about a shepherd. And so I'll read a little bit of it. It said, "Then this message came to me from the Lord, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds, the leaders of Israel. Give them this message from the sovereign Lord. What sorrow awaits you, shepherds, who feed yourselves instead of your flocks? Shouldn't shepherds feed their sheep? You drink the milk, wear the wool, and butcher the best animals, but you let your flock starve. You have not taken care of the weak. You have not tended to the sick or bound up the injured. You have not gone looking for those who have wandered away and are lost. Instead, you have ruled them with harshness and cruelty. So my sheep have been scattered without a shepherd, and they are easy prey for any animal. They have wandered through all the mountains and all the hills across the face of the earth, yet no one has gone to search for them." So um, the question I want to ask is, what are the primary responsibilities of a shepherd? But before you answer it, I want to say that most of the time in a church context, when we talk about shepherds, we talk about pastors. But from a biblical standpoint, I think most of the time when it uses the word shepherd, it's referring to people who are responsible for other people, period. Because here he says the leaders of Israel. So you can use this as a context and talk about some of the things that are listed here, or you can talk about some other things. But I'm curious, what are the primary responsibilities of a shepherd?
I think like the obvious ones are like tend to the needs of your flock, right? If they need food, you bring them to a place where there is food. You take care of them. You provide shelter for them. Um, you guard them or protect them against what may be on the outside or against each other. There's a wolf in the flock, and so I think those are some obvious ones that could apply to real shepherds, but also as leaders, things that leaders should do.
Yeah, I think you have to lead people in the right direction. I think sometimes being a shepherd means giving clarity to a situation and truthfulness. I don't know. I think a lot about that, about direction, making sure. Because when I think about like a flock of sheep, I think about how you, in any flock really, where you have one animal that see something that they think is scary and they flee, and it's like everybody, chaos can happen pretty quickly. And I mean, we as people are certainly capable of that too. And I think a good shepherd is somebody who can kind of calm down situations and say, hey, I think this is how we need to treat this. This is, so everybody doesn't self destruct.
There are a lot of TikTok videos of people, you talked about one person going crazy, how they'll walk into a situation of people that they don't necessarily know, and they'll start screaming and ducking like something's happening, and then everybody does the same thing.
Yeah.
They just start screaming and ducking.
Yeah.
They have no idea what they're screaming and ducking for. They're just following suit. And so, yeah, I do think that's a significant piece of it. What, any other responsibilities like?
I think, I think for us, this may apply to us as like pastors in our church, that we kind of shepherd shepherds, right? Part of what we do. I think, and we've had conversations about this on the podcast before, and even in meetings and things like that, about how we as a church, like our growth kind of stops when we refuse to take on new shepherds, right, and build up new shepherds. And that I think that many people, maybe not everybody, but many people are called. We all have influence. I think everyone has influence, and but we have to invest in our leaders. Like, I could not run the youth group just by myself. Sheryl could not do all of children's ministry just on her own. The strength of what we do is in our leaders. And so we need to, and Cheryl's in there and is with the kids a lot of times, and I love the students and I'm with them a lot. But we both know our limitations, and that if we were the only ones tending to the flock, that things could go awry. I mean,
It could definitely go awry.
For 100 kids on a Sunday morning, like, that would be ridiculous. That's a lot. And so what we do, part of what we do, and we've talked about how a church's growth can be hindered when, if you only have a pastor and that pastor needs to be friends with everyone, right? If everyone goes to that one pastor, it hinders the growth of the flock and even prevents some people from taking on opportunities to become a shepherd themselves. And so I think a big part of what shepherds do is that they create more shepherds, and they oversee that, and they help to build that up, because that's when we can become the most effective. Now, in the real life example of sheep do not turn into actual shepherds, but they do. Real shepherds, though, I mean, they do hire out more people, or they find people to become shepherds, and they train those people so that they can do so much more. And I think that does apply here as well.
One of the things I notice in this passage is one of the accusations is they think of themselves first.
Mm-hmm.
What causes shepherds to become selfish? Because I don't think they always start out that way. Rarely. Rarely. Okay, I don't want to say never, but I would just say rarely. Do pastors go into ministry to get rich?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But some do. And there's this tipping point somewhere where it becomes, about them. I've always admired Rick Warren. When Purpose Driven Church became so big, who knows how much money he made off the book, and that's irrelevant. But he paid back the church everything they had ever paid him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he stopped taking a salary. Just this past week, actually, somebody who had some negative things to say about Joel Osteen, and they said, you always speak fairly positively about him. And they said, I had a little bit different opinion. They had read an article sometime this past week, and the previous week, and it listed the 10 wealthiest pastors in America. And he was like number 3 or 4. But he was the only one of those 10 that didn't take a salary from his church.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I see him a little bit differently now than I did before. And there's this tipping point. We can see it. Jets,
Yeah.
houses, all of those things. That becomes a tipping point, but rarely it's unusual that they got into it
Mm-hmm.
for that. But there came a time where there was a line crossed. What do you think causes people to cross that line? They started out well-meaning, but they become self-centered, and it becomes about them.
I would say maybe a large part of that would be when you begin to think too highly of yourself. And you forget, or you stop acknowledging the fact that God has given you any ability that you have, and that He has orchestrated every situation to turn out the way that it has, be it prosperity, or, how many people are going to your church, or whatever community service projects you've done that have been, really impactful. And I think, because at that point you can justify, well, I deserve
Right.
more. I deserve to get compensated for my role in this.
I think a lot. I mean, sometimes I think it could be pride, or maybe someone who sees an opportunity, and they take it. Very odd example. I recently read a book that probably everyone read in high school called Animal Farm. I don't know if you've heard of it before,
George Orwell. I
yeah,
think you
George
wrote that
Orwell,
one.
yeah. And the whole idea of the book is that the animals, they take over the farm from the humans, and it's like now the animals are in charge, and how it's like seems like a hopeful story about these animals building back up their farm, and then slowly but surely, like the pigs are taking control over things, and the pigs are starting to have rights that the other animals don't have. But it's kind of slowly but surely it comes this place. And the pigs initially were doing it not they were helping to take over the farm not because they thought, oh, like we're gonna be in charge, but because they just wanted the animals to be the ones who were in control. But then slowly but surely they start taking more power, making little changes and doing things that put them in a place where they essentially are human. They essentially are in the place, and they are, over or like completely over the animals, and
Doesn't go well.
it does not go
What
well.
is his other book that I read it in high school? I didn't read Animal Farm.
Okay.
I can't remember.
I
the others,
highly
the one
recommend
that he
Animal
was
Farm,
the
by the way.
most-
I thought it was really good. But yeah, but with it though, it's you can see like how and you can look at that and look at, like the Nazis and how Hitler came to power, and and all different places all around the world, and they all follow the exact same formula as it does in this book Animal Farm, which is just kind of crazy. But even in some churches in some areas, someone starts off and it's well-meaning, not like they were trying to put themselves in this place, but maybe they saw an opportunity, or they realized, hey, the ship is sinking. I'm going to do everything I can to put myself in a position where when the ship does sink, I'm floating. In fact, I'm flying in my helicopter, or in my jet.
The thing I would say, there are sometimes there are things from the outside that we don't know the whole story. So I give you a couple of examples. I just had this conversation recently with my dad, and he was telling me he had read a pastor had been invited to another church to preach. And these are two. If I said either the church name that he went to preach at or the person's name, pretty much anybody listening would know both. And one of them has made the news a lot in the last number of years. But he said they paid him $150,000 to come speak, which sounds like an enormous amount of money, right? That we can't even comprehend. And that's what he was saying. He was like, I don't understand how a preacher could take $150,000 or how a church could justify paying somebody $150,000 to come speak one time. And my response to him, I said, there's two pieces to this that I would say. One, that they may have been trying to reach a different demographic. They may have thought that it would push them down some avenues that they might not have been able to go, and investing that money in the long run might be worth it. That's a possibility. I said the second thing is you don't know what the person does with the money that gets it. And I said, let me give you an example. I said, in the last year, I was a part of a pretty extravagant fundraiser. That's how I would describe it. A pretty extravagant fundraiser for which you had to give a significant gift to be a part of it. It was a missions organization, and you had to give a really significant gift to be able to be a part of it. And while I was there, I had lots of questions because I thought, gosh, like if you want to give money to this organization, why is all of this other money spent to put on this event? That feels extravagant. And after I asked a couple questions, like the answer was given, that then I understood So a single person pays for the entire event. Like they pay for everything. They pay for the meals, the hotels, everything that's done. They pay for everything. So if you go and attend, an individual is paying for that. It's not coming out of the money that you give to the organization. So 100% of the money that you give to the organization um, goes toward the mission project. And I I saw it completely different when I understood that then, that, okay, there's more to this than I understand, because from the outside, I could have said, okay, all of these people are having a big old party and 10% of what they give is going to missions. When in reality, 100% of what they were given is going to missions, and a single person was funding the event to allow them all to get together and share the vision and that kind of thing. And so I would say sometimes people are misguided and pride gets in the way and they begin to look at themselves. I would say other times, there's more to it than meets the eye, you know. Um, like for an example, if you travel the world preaching crusades and you want to have a private plane, I don't have a problem with that, because you just got through traveling 36 hours to get back home on what would have been a direct flight 11 hours. So you could have saved an entire 24-hour period if you were flying but you don't need 7 jets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. So that's when it becomes different, and some of the people that I've heard justify, okay, I need a private jet. They didn't have just a private jet; they had private jets, and that was so all of their other family could travel and other people could go along. So, sometimes there's more to the story. Other times, because we're just not present. Other times it is distinctly selfish. I can't imagine paying somebody $150,000 for a preaching engagement. I can't.
Unless like Paul came back. I don't think you would take it though.
I can't imagine. However, let me say this. I invested like $40,000 in a business consultant. And I thought, I didn't understand how people could do that kind of thing. But the question I asked myself is, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? Because it would have paid itself back multiple times over. And so sometimes there's value in it. But those numbers and sometimes let's just be honest, it all depends on the context. $150,000 for us is 15% of our entire annual budget. If I had to guess, the church that they were at, it would be like 15% of their Sunday offering or something. It's that kind of difference in context. So, what any other things that you think shepherds have to be concerned about, like that are their primary responsibilities? I would say on the opposite side of protection, they can't be harsh and cruel. They can't. What's the word I'm looking for? Abuse, manipulate the people that they care for. I think those are dangerous things. I want to say I've seen up close and personal some, in particular in the church world, who I thought abused people, and I don't necessarily mean physical abuse. I mean financial abuse. They would take somebody's last dollar and not think twice about it, for their own good. There are pastors who prey on poor people, and that's unfortunate. But I think abuse it can be sexual abuse. We've seen that in the Catholic Church, it could be mental abuse, physical abuse, just abuse of power. I've seen that, where they just expected people to squirt hand sanitizer for them. I mean, just,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of things. So I think you also have to be aware of the abuse, and it has to be confronted. And there's a lot of that being exposed in the church world today, excesses and abuses that we have to be careful about. Well, thank you for joining us this week on One Single Story. We hope you'll be back next week as we pick up a brand new book talking about the things that you're reading that day.